A gospel passage such as this simple one that we have just heard might make us a little bit uncomfortable as we listen to its message. First and foremost, this is due to the culture in which we find ourselves living, one of the most affluent, certainly, in the world. Because we don't have to look hard to discern what is the creed of such a culture, one in which the value of an individual is often weighed according to the school they can afford to attend, the money they have the power to make, the address at which they can afford to live, the possessions that they have the ability to accumulate. In such a culture, it is not always easy to distinguish between what is actually healthy ambition and what is the vain pursuit of wealth, power, possessions. In a consumerist culture, such as the one in which truly we presently live, we are told subtly and not so subtly that we need things, even particular things, in order that we might be accepted or be happy. And so it is not easy to discern the difference between what we really need and our superfluous desires. And therefore, it is not easy to judge as God judges, or to see as God sees, or to know what makes us rich in His sight rather than in the world. Because the influence of the world and its values is much more omnipresent than the values of the gospel. So if we are to take our discipleship seriously, then we must examine the potentially dangerous indoctrination that we receive from our culture and accept the ever-present challenge of looking at its values with a very clear and thus often critical eye. If we accept this challenge, then we must be clear about how we might grow rich in the eyes of God. Indeed, how we might store up treasure for ourselves in His kingdom. Maybe the most instructive little saying then in regard to the overall message of the gospel today is this: one cannot expect to enter the kingdom of heaven without a letter of recommendation from the poor. If we can take this to heart, then our comfort level with the message that's placed before us will certainly increase. Indeed, we can break that culturally induced cycle of always wanting more, and when it's acquired, still feeling like it's not enough, by considering the poor of our own communities, our nation, indeed the world. For there are those who do not have safe or stable housing, adequate food, decent clothing, and their numbers are in fact in the millions, according to the statistics that come to us from reliable sources. Therefore, when we have a house, or even two, enough to eat, maybe even the ability to dine out, when we have clothing adequate to our true needs, and maybe even a closet or two full, then before we seek to improve what we already have, or to upgrade it, or acquire more, it's wise for us to set aside something to truly help those who don't have. That doesn't mean that we have to give all that we have in reserve to charity, but it does suggest that if we are serious about following Jesus, we have to give some percentage of our extra, and each of us is left to decide that amount within our own conscience. But without doubt, something is owed, and none of us who has more than just our basic needs covered can consider ourselves excused from the obligation. So, as the psalm advises us, let us number our days aright, that we might gain that wisdom of heart, and realize that now is the time, today is the day, to invest in our true future, the kingdom of God, by sharing what we can afford to share with others in need.